Hi, you're listening to Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. This is Jackie Miller. Kate Anthony is back with me to discuss her new book, The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Divorce. Kate and I discuss what good looks like in a marriage or a relationship. Working through some of the chapters in her book, we talk about excuses for bad behavior, finances in marriage, and how to be playful in a relationship, and much, much more. Listen in as Kate and I discuss the D Word. All right, welcome to Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist, and welcome back. Kate, how are you?
I am so good. I'm so happy to be here again.
This is for an exciting reason, Kate Anthony. You have written and launched a book called The D Word.
I did. I wrote a book.
So cool. I'm so excited. You're blazing a trail ahead of me. It's been knocking around in my head for a while, but I know it's not an easy feat. So
it's not. But you know what? I highly recommend it because I'll tell you why I wrote this book. This is really kind of morbid.
Jump into it.
I wrote this book because, it's been on my to-do list for a while. Yeah. And in 2020, I got 2020 COVID, right? I got OG COVID.
Got it.
And I thought I was going to die. And one night I was lying there and I thought, I might not wake up tomorrow. And it was just a very it was actually a serene thought. I mean, I was so powerless over it. There was nothing I could do. I was also so sick that I was like, wow, I actually might not wake up tomorrow. And I thought, okay, what are my regrets? And the only regret was that I hadn't written my book.
That's really powerful. Seriously.
It was like once I got better and I got my feet back on the ground, I was like, okay. And now look, it's 2023 moving into 2024. It took me a minute, but it was like, okay, this has to get done.
You know what else though, to that point is, there's so many people that have things to say, important things to say, running around out in the world, and many of us thinking about writing the book, but it just goes to show it's not easy. Like you need to mean it. You need to have clear intention.
Oh, that's right. 100%. Before I could write the book, I had to get an agent that I, then submit to publishers. That was their job, right? But it's a process.
It's a process. I'm just now learning. So awesome. Anyway, yay. I'm so excited. We're going to talk about it today. In case you've been living in a divorce cave, Kate Anthony has her own very popular podcast that is New York Times recommended, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. You have also created the groundbreaking program, Should I Stay or Should I Go, that helps people with that very daunting task of deciding often if they get a divorce or not. It's not an easy question.
It is not. That's why I wrote a whole book about it.
Yep. So let's talk about it. It's a whole book worth of shit.
Really not. It's a whole book worth of shit to figure out and to comb through.
There are so many facets of marriage and issues that people deal with and challenges that come into play that lead them to question whether or not their marriage should continue. And so there's so many quandaries I feel like people find themselves in where they justify bad behavior. I feel like you're really good at leading the horse to water and making people think about those things. I want to call this episode, What Does Good Look Like, or What Does Healthy Look Like? Because I like to say that to my clients or just other friends that are going through hard times. Sometimes we need to take a step back from all the minutia of our relationships, right? And just go, wait a minute, what is good supposed to look like? And I feel like your program and your book really epitomizes that. And so I want to call it that. And just to kick this off, you have a chapter called, But I Love Him, about defining love in a spiritual context. Couple things that you brought up, like he's a great guy, but he cheats on me. And then one I hear all the time, he's a great dad, but he abuses me. I hear that one a lot. A lot of people, they start out their story like that. He's a really good dad.
He's a really great dad, but he just treats me, the mother of his children, like shit.
What do people need to think about?
I don't think that someone who destabilizes the foundation of the family by abusing or cheating on the mother of their children is a good parent, right? There's so much more to being a good dad than he plays with the kids or he makes their lunches or there is this foundational piece of the family and the bedrock of the family, which is the relationship between parents. And when one person is actively destroying that, right? Cheating is a choice. Being attracted to somebody else out in the world is not a choice. Cheating, acting on that, texting somebody else, right? All of that is a choice. And when you make it that choice, you're putting a knife in the foundation of the children's lives. And so, look, I think there's so many things that we don't think about when we're getting married, and we don't talk about, and we don't, we don't design, right? Great story I have, actually. I one day met Shaq.
The Shaq?
The Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal, who is, I can confirm, the hugest human being I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Ginormous. And I literally came up to, I think, like below his pecs, know? So, but Shaq, so he's like, oh, so you're a divorce coach? And I said, yeah. And he said, so is texting and emailing cheating? And I said, what were you texting and emailing, Mr. O'Neal?
Who are we talking about, Mr. O'Neal?
What did you say? And
are you asking for a friend?
Yeah. No, he was definitely asking for himself. Wow. And I said, well, what was in the texts or emails? He's like, I love you, I miss you. And I was like, well, dude, like, what if you had seen that in her emails? Like, how would you have felt? And he was like, I wouldn't have been in her shit. And I was like, okay, that's not the point.
That's a non-answer answer.
Right.
No.
And so there was a lot of back and forth, and I was like, okay, you are not coachable on this, on this level. You might be coachable on the court, but you are not coachable here.
I love your insurance commercials, but this isn't going to work.
But the point is, right, that in Shaq's world, that wasn't cheating. Don't know why, right? Because he didn't do anything. He didn't cross the line. He didn't go into anything physical with the ex that he was communicating with. Well, to his wife, who went in his shit, probably for good reason. For a reason,
because her instincts were telling her to. Mm-hmm.
Right. And my stance on that is like, look, if you're already doing that, your marriage is over, trust is gone.
Agreed.
Right? If you're already doing that. But they had not decided together where the line was, right? So, is Shaq a great dad? I have no idea. But I don't think that actively working to destabilize the foundation of the family,
right,
by disrespecting and cheating on your spouse, makes you a great dad.
So many things come to mind, because in our last podcast, we had talked about also that if your values align, there you go. Shaq and his wife's values did not align. Like you said, they did not agree on where that line was. But you're absolutely right, because we get in these situations, right? You're married, you have kids, you have a mortgage, you have car payments, and oh my gosh, I just can't leave this guy. So I think you just start justifying, and you start looking for things like, well, like you said, he does play with the kids, and he does take the kids on Saturdays for a few hours. And he does, first of all, our definition is really screwed up of
well, I was going to say, right, the bar has become so low for men. And it's really sad, because we've lowered it.
Yeah.
We have lowered it. And it's like, if a woman did any of those things, right, just saw their kids on the weekends and, but came home from work and went into the bathroom and pooped for an hour and a half and, whatever, like, she would be a neglectful mom. But dad does all that. And then he comes out and like crawls on the floor and plays like horsey for, 20 minutes. And he's like an amazing dad. I mean, you see a dad in the grocery store and we're like, oh my God, he's so wonderful.
The kids to the grocery store. Aw.
Like, give me a fucking break, and that's our fault. We have lowered that bar.
Yeah. I have to admit, if I'm in Target and I see a guy with his 3 kids, I'm like, I have a little like, me.
Yeah, right. I know. Me too. Me too. Like, I saw a guy at Trader Joe's and he was carrying a Barbie backpack and had his like little girl with him, but the backpack was on his shoulder. And I was like, cute.
Yeah. And that's like, fine. It can be cute, but then why isn't it cute when mom does it? Right.
That's right.
Anyway, we can go on that forever. But you know what? So let's just stop and say, what does good look like?
I think the most important thing to ask, right, is how do you feel in your relationship, right? It's about like, do you feel honored and respected?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like your partner treats you as an equal? Do you feel like you're actually in the partnership that you thought you signed up for?
Great
Do you
question.
feel love? Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you can go out with your friends with no reprisals, with nobody? You're not going to get 7,000 text messages when you're out trying to kind of, intrude on your time. I think I had a client once who, like, every time she went out, like, her husband would just show up. Going out with her girlfriends. Like,
yeah,
hello, that's stalking, right? So,
I've
like,
known a situation similar to that as well. Mm-hmm.
right? And everyone's like,
Scary.
oh, he's so sweet. And it's like,
That's
no.
exactly what we were at a big birthday dinner. And I would say 6 of the 9 women thought it was really cute. And the other 3 of us were absolutely side glance. Like, is anybody else here completely creeped out?
Right.
And there were 3 of us that made eye contact. And I know we were for sure, but the majority.
Oh, he's so sweet. I missed you, baby. No,
Yeah.
you didn't. You were
Yeah.
checking
Yeah.
up on me.
No, you didn't.
Right.
But, and I think those are all extremely important questions. You're right. Like, how do I feel? And it's okay to even take it a step further and be like, God, what I think would be amazing is if he came home, he know Johnny struggles with homework every night. I know he knows how to do that math. If he just walked in the door and grabbed our son and said, hey, son, let's sit down and knock this out without anyone having to ask him, without anyone, and I know I'm getting really specific here,
yeah,
but
no, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
Ask yourself those
100%.
things. What would awesome look like to you?
Right. What are the things that would really, really, this is like, it's almost like a love language thing, because it could be really specific to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the things that are going to make you feel like he really cares and he gets it, and makes you feel supported? And it may not be the same thing that makes, your friend feel supported or whatever, but if this is important to you, communicating, here's the thing, we have to communicate our needs to our partners. We have to. They're not mind readers. We have to communicate our needs to our partners. Watch what they do. Do they hear you and get into action? Or do they, reject what you said or say, okay, honey, and then never do it? Right? Like, all of the things.
Do a little test.
How are you in relationship? I don't know about you, but like, I'm the same person in a relationship like 6 months down the line that you started dating in the first week. Like, I'm the same person.
I am now.
Like, right?
Yep,
I'm not a love bomber. I'm not trying to right? I'm literally like, no, this is who I am. This is what I give in relationship is what I give in relationship. And so ask yourself if you're receiving what you get, like, does it feel like there's an imbalance?
Right. And that is so profound, which I use that term, I realize, on my podcast a lot. That is so profound, because I have now had an experience in a relationship where I had to go, and it's a little uncomfortable because I'm not used to it. And I was, what if the reaction lets me down? That's a scary what if. And so sometimes we all hold back and don't ask for what we need just because we're scared of the what if, what if it doesn't turn out great? And the moment when they say, wow, I'm so glad you told me that, I will never do that again. Or of course I'll pitch in and do that. Or, and you're like,
well,
okay.
Especially those of us who have been abused, right? Like, it's so hard for us to express our needs. It's even hard for us to know what our needs are because, we had to be disconnected and dissociated from them for so long that to have someone say, oh my God, I hear you and you're important to me. And of course I'll do that because it matters to you. It's the most healing thing in the world.
It sure is. And I know that you mentioned the love languages in your book, which I love doing the love languages. I've mentioned this on my podcast a few times, but not only with adults, but with my children, my teenage children, it's been very eye-opening. So you guys you'll read about it in Kate's book, but also you can Google love languages and see the author who put it together and do the quiz. And then also you have a quiz about, is your relationship healthy, in your book as well, right?
I do. In my book, I have it's just a healthy relationship checklist, really. Yeah. And it just goes down the line. Like, do you feel like this? Do you feel like this? Do you feel like this? And, it's very simple, but I think it's pretty telling.
I think it's a great place to start. Next topic I want to bring up, which is also a chapter in your book about, am I being abused? And I think that, again, we can go off on so many tangents on this, but one thing that comes to mind is when something's going on, our gut's telling us something's not right, and we fall into the trap of, if I just try harder, if I'm going to wake up tomorrow and do this and it's going to get better. And then we start to blame it on things, kind of to go back to our topic before, but we start making excuses. I don't know. What else are your thoughts on asking yourself that question?
Again, right? I think it's really important to, instead of looking at the relationship and trying to determine, like, is it abusive? Is he abusive? Is he an abuser? Is he a narcissist? Blah, blah, blah. How do you feel in the relationship? Do you feel supported and loved and cared for? Or do you feel like everything is your fault? Do you feel like the goalpost keeps moving? Because in an abusive relationship, we're always told that if we just do X, then they wouldn't have to do Y. And so then you do X, and then they're still doing Y, but now you're supposed to do Z because you didn't quite get X right. And so now and we're bending ourselves into pretzels trying to fill the void of this other person that is not ours to fill. And you never arrive.
That's okay. Arrive. My Jackie-ism phrase is, I could never get enough points to be ahead. I could never win. I could never win. There was never great.
That's right. It's such a great metaphor for it. I think that's great, right? You cannot. The points are not yours to have. I was talking about it the other day, and I was like, it's like you're in the dark. You're told there's a light switch on the wall. And so you're like moving around the wall and you find a light switch and you turn it on, but like it doesn't work. And so then they're like, no, the other light switch. And you're still going around in the dark trying to find and then you find one and you turn it on. And they're like, no, the other one.
Oh God,
and
I love this analogy.
Right. And none of those fucking light switches turn on the light.
And they never will.
They never will. But because you're in the dark, you always think there's just one more that you haven't tried. That's the mind fuck.
Sure
that's
is.
The mind, because that's where you're like, oh, but there's got to be another one. No, okay, just flip that one, but I probably already flipped that one. So and then I'm going to go in a grid pattern down the wall and make sure, right?
Oh yeah.
And you're going to spend your life feeling around on that wall to find the right switch that doesn't exist.
Yep. And in the meantime, in the background, you're hearing, oh, you're so stupid. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm having to tell you this again. Oh my God, everybody else can find the light switch immediately. Are you kidding me? You're the only one that can't find the light switch. I mean, this is such a good analogy, but
100%. I mean, and on and on and on it goes.
And on and on and on it goes. And then enter back in our excuses. And we're like, well, he was abused as a kid. What about the excuses we start to make?
Yes. Right. And you know what? He probably was. And, I did that for years. I'm like, well, it's his wounding and, because his dad and the rage and the yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, we are giving them more grace than we're giving ourselves. I can be compassionate. I can have absolute empathy and compassion for somebody else's wounding, while also having a boundary where I will not allow them to use it as a weapon against me.
Or an excuse.
And that doesn't mean you can't talk to me that way. That means that if they've been talking to you that way for 10 years and they're not changing, but you think it's because of their childhood wounding, but they're not going to therapy to deal with that shit. Right. They're still wielding it as a weapon against you. You get out of the way. You leave, because they're not going to not do that.
And they didn't do it in the beginning, so they know how not to do it.
That's right. When I first said, I'm done. 2 weeks later, my ex-husband came to me and he said, Kate, I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave. And I was like, so you knew that what you were doing was wrong. Yep. You could have stopped. You just didn't think you had to. That's what you just said to me.
You thought I'd always stay here and put up with it.
You just said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. For validating that I left, because you are saying that it was not good. What you were doing was not okay. That must have been like validating and confusing and hurtful and relieving all in the same time.
It blew my mind.
I bet.
It blew my mind.
And, while we're making up these excuses and we're trying to prop them up to make them feel better and we're trying to build up points, I feel like in that we get lost and we ignore our own instincts. And that's where the beginning of the like pushing down who we are is. Right. And exactly. That is such a slippery slope.
And that's where we all get to, right? Yeah. And that's why I start my book with the self-work. That's where I start with all my clients. Like, we're not going to we won't talk about him for a minute. We're going to talk about him. Trust me. First, we're going to talk about you. right?
Mhm.
Who are you? Because I know that when I got out of my marriage, I had no idea who I was. None. I was so lost and confused and empty and a hollow shell. I just had no idea, you know?
And it's the thing I hear over and over again, and I know you do too. It is the weirdest phenomenon to not know who you are in your 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s when you separate from another person. It is just, it's weird, and it's real. It's a thing.
It is.
For sure.
I didn't know what my favorite color was. I couldn't tell you what I wanted to eat for dinner, right? Because I had spent
what kind of music I liked.
Oh, absolutely.
Even what my style was anymore.
I still don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. That's a tough one to crack. And it keeps changing.
Is sweatpants a style?
Sweatpants is a style. Just ask my 2 teenage daughters, and I know you have a son as well. Sweatpants is that's the thing. Basically, a lot of this, what we're talking about, is gaslighting. You also have a chapter goes specifically into emotional abuse. I said this, I think, to you on our last podcast, episode. I, believe it or not, asked myself as I was leaving, as I was learning what gaslighting was, like, oh, I don't know if he did that. Okay, that's all he did. I mean, it's like... Actually, now that I'm an expert, I think, though, it can take on so many forms. And one of the ones I think is so insidious, and then I'll expand on this later. I want your thoughts, though, is the teasing and joking.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That is gaslighting.
Well, what's the gaslighting part about it is when they say something that's really hurtful and they're it's joking. And then you say, that was really hurtful. That was a really mean thing to say to me. And they say, I was just joking. You don't have a sense of humor, right? That's the gaslighting. It's not like, oh shit, I'm sorry. That hurt your feelings. I'm sorry.
And then if you don't bounce back right away and let them get away with it, then it continues all day. What is your problem? Like, are you serious? Are you still mad about that? Like, come on. Right.
Exactly. It was designed to hurt. Let's be honest about it.
And now you're crazy for thinking.
And now I'm crazy for being hurt.
And this was something that took me a really long time to get over, which is why I bring up this topic. Because as I entered a new relationship, he joked around with me a couple of times, and I looked right at him and said, don't ever joke with me like that about that. And he just, the eyes got wide, and he said, I'm so sorry. I'll never say it again. And now 5 years later, we crack up, we tease all the time. It took me a really long time to get there. It was about 2.5 years in. I looked at him, I said, you can joke now. He goes, are you sure? Because last reaction, like, I just never want to make you feel like that, which is, let's talk about what good looks like, right?
That's what you want. I don't ever want you to feel that way.
No. But the thing that I've come to realize, Kate, is that you can only do it when your heart feels safe, your head feels safe, and your body feels safe. That's what I say. Like, say your partner builds you up all the time. They tell you what an amazing cook you are every day. They thank you for every meal. Oh my gosh, you're so good. They brag you in front of other people. And then when you burn the chicken one night, they're like, because they do nothing but build you up all the time. And so then enter a teasing joke where you're laughing at yourself. You're like, oh my God, look what I did to the chicken. Yeah, should we eat it? And they're like, if I want to get food poisoning, now you can start joking again. But that's why I wanted to talk about what good looks like, because it is just one of the things really that stabs me in the heart when I see that.
It's like you've built up currency. Like, you have to earn the ability to joke with me, right? Like, I need you to build up. Like you said, I need to feel physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. I need to feel safe in all of these ways before you can, give me a little, knock that feels playful.
That feels playful. That's the word.
And, as your boyfriend learned, right? Like, oh, this is like, I'm dealing with somebody who has trauma in this area, and was very receptive to holding that trauma for you and respecting that. Now he's earned his ability to joke with you.
And playful is the word, because I was doing some research on relationships recently, and the word playful kept coming up. And so then I started looking up clinical studies, which I love you because you do the same. I know you're always quoting statistics because I like to back up what we say, right? It was just like playfulness is like one of the top things that keeps relationships together. And I just started having all these thoughts about gaslighting and teasing and playfulness and how you can get back to a healthy place because it can be such a positive force in a relationship.
Right. But again, like build up that currency, right? And there's a difference between, by the way, being playful and teasing.
Yes. And that's where the instincts have to come in.
Yeah. Right. Like we can be playful without me feeling like it's at my expense or your expense, right?
Yes.
We don't have to, it doesn't have to be at anybody's expense.
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe teasing's the wrong word. Like we need to take it teasing out of
I think teasing is right. I think teasing is, I don't love teasing.
No, you're right. The whole point of teasing is to poke someone and you're not poking, you're playing. But yes, good point on the playfulness. Tease is not the word. When I see women, and I know you see women going into that transition into the next part of their life, if they've chosen to leave the relationship and have had the divorce, and it's so hard to trust yourself. And yes, you just made the point. Your instincts are the difference.
That's right. And the thing that I want people to know is that it takes time. It really does. My marriage was 10 years. The next really, probably the relationship that was more damaging than my marriage, that was 2.5 years. And that was well after my marriage. But it took me 2.5 years to finally get it, right? Like, this is, that's what this is. I mean, it actually took me a few years beyond that to be able to name what had happened in that relationship, which was a massive trauma bond and, lots of like intermittent reinforcement and just a total mind fuck. And it wasn't until I started doing this work that I was like, oh, that's what was happening in that relationship. Right. And now I might go on a couple of dates with somebody and be like momentarily kind of swept up in whatever, and then be like, oh, right. Okay. Like, wait a minute. That's a totally disorganized attachment. That is, I feel completely off balance, and that's not a good thing. And I get to name it now. And so it doesn't mean that you're never going to do it again. Right. But if you really do the work and take the time, I like to say that like your lead time gets like shorter and shorter.
Yes, right. The gap starts to close.
Right. Now, it was 2.5 years. It was 10 years. It was 2.5 years. Now it's like, maybe 3 weeks.
Right.
Know? So I want people to know that it's not like you'll never do it again. Because this whole thing of trusting ourselves is the biggest thing.
Trusting
ourselves. Myself. I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself anymore. It's like, let alone, I don't trust other people. I don't trust myself. And that was so huge for me. Again, back to reestablishing, or for some of us, establishing for the first time, a connection with self. Who am I? Right? It's not about what's he doing? Is he the one? Is he the best? Is he the blah, blah, blah? It's okay. Who am I? And getting really, really, really rooted in that. And I was interviewing Dr. Ramani a couple of weeks last week for my podcast. And she was saying she calls for a 12-month moratorium, no dating. After you're, getting out of a relationship with a narcissist and you're trying to heal from it, 12 months, nothing. I have to say, I think she's, who am I to argue with her? But
right.
I think she's Dr. Ramani. I agree with her because I really think that we need to go through that full cycle of all of the seasons and the birthdays and the Christmases and the blah, blah, blah. And just the dark nights of the soul, all the shit that we get out there to date to avoid, actually need to experience, right?
Right.
The dark nights of the soul and the sadness and the like nights of journaling and, burning shit, right? You've got to go through that. And that's going to begin to heal your picker when you are taking that time to reconnect with self.
And it's okay. I think the big thing is to try to just slow down the dating too, because we were so into or targets for people who, just wanted to push it to let's get married next week. I love to say, I love that my teenagers now use the words like gaslighting and love bombing every day. It's the best.
Isn't it the best?
And they know that like a tropical vacation on the first date isn't necessarily a good thing.
It's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing. But, look, we're conditioned for that. We're like, I just watch The Bachelor where like every date is a massive adventure. And like, It's intoxicating. And no wonder they're all falling in love with each other. They're not falling in love with each other. They're falling in love with the hype
of
these
in the
crazy dates.
yes,
And,
yes. The love bombing is the prince on the white horse showed up. There he is.
Right. There
I've been told about him since I was a little girl.
I was just talking to someone else about this today,
came.
about how this gets so deeply embedded into our unconscious. And women, like, look, Gen Xers, we are totally screwed because, we went to bed with these stories. These were our bedtime stories, and they got embedded into our subconscious. We read the stories, we turned out the light, and then we dreamed about it. And it literally got embedded into our subconscious. So we were programmed with really bad stuff.
Yeah. And, I think where the wires get really crossed is we think we interpret that for maybe a partner who's just protective and respectful and can be somewhat of an alpha, just in the sense that, like, he wants his family to flourish and be supported and be, versus the like, oh, my prince showed up because he took me on a tropical vacation. And I think our wires get crossed there of like what good looks like in a man when it comes to those two things.
And this is why, so often they're like, oh, all the, the nice guys get the shaft. And, look, if a guy is saying the nice guys get the shaft and he's like all entitled about it and pouty and angry, that can veer into incel land, which is, dangerous. When we're dating, we do need to be listening with different ears and watching with different eyes. Like, is this person may not be the most exciting person in the world. They may not have all the money in the world. They may not be like, zipping me off to Cabo for the weekend. Are they steady? Are they showing up? Are they listening? Are they sharing? How do I feel? Do I feel safe and secure?
And we can go down this road for a long way, but it's all those things like, how are they talking about their ex, girlfriends or spouse? Sure. How do they treat their kids? How do they,
how do they treat the waiter?
How do they treat, that is my big one. That's my big one.
It's like you, like 5 seconds in, right?
Yeah. The customer service people on the phone Last but not least, I wanted to touch on your chapter about feeling trapped. But one of the things that comes to mind for me is like financial abuse.
Yeah.
And I love to talk with women because it's such a big problem, even in healthy relationships, women and money and finances. And I want to talk about what good looks like with that.
Have your own. Have your own.
Yep. Have your own.
The bottom line is almost all money in a marriage is joint. Depending on the state, it's, equitable versus equal, but you should have access to all of the money in the relationship. The only exception is like, if it's an inheritance, that's his or yours, right? It's not marital. You should have access to all the money. So if someone is saying like, if you know that there are accounts but you don't have the login to them, if you don't have your own login, if your names are not on all the accounts, look, if your name's not on all the accounts, it doesn't actually matter. It's still yours. And so you should get your name on them. If there's resistance, if you say to your spouse, hey, listen, I know I've had my head in the sand about money and this has been your domain, but I'm just curious, what are the accounts that we have and how much money do we have in them? And, where are things at for us financially? And their response is, something along the lines of, don't you worry your pretty little head about it. I've got it covered. Why are you asking? Then that's a big red flag. And while if your names are not on the accounts and you actually can't see, then like the mail comes, like the statements come in the mail and they don't have your name on it, you can't open them legally because it's a federal offense to open mail that's not addressed to you. Yeah. But I would start taking photographs of the envelopes that come in the mail. So oh, this is interesting.
Yes.
There's like a Charles Schwab envelope. Apparently, we have a Charles Schwab account.
Yeah.
If you do get divorced, then in discovery, you can say, well, where's that Charles Schwab account? I know we have a Charles Schwab account. I know we have this, and this, because these are the statements that come. You should have access. Please do not sign any tax return. This is a good point. Don't sign anything without reading it. Do not sign your tax return without fully reading it. Listen, I know we don't understand what they say. At least if you're signing a tax return, ask your CPA to go over it with you so you understand what they're talking about, what you're signing, because you're signing it.
And I just had a financial expert on this last episode, and we had to go through all of that as well, because so many women having to file for innocent spouse, clauses.
That's right. And not everyone gets it.
Not everyone gets it.
That's a problem. You signed it.
It makes me want to go out there and start all these women finance groups, because I have a lot of friends that are married, and divorce is not a topic of discussion, and it's not on the table.
No.
And many of them are afraid to ask their husband.
If you're afraid to talk about anything in your marriage, to me, that's a red flag.
What
are you afraid of?
Right. They just like what you said, that the answer is going to be, don't worry your pretty little head. Why are you asking? What's going on? I've had some uncomfortable conversations as a divorce coach when I bring this up, and my happily married friends are like, oh, I can't ask my husband that. And I'm like, well, why? Yes, you can. You have to.
It's yours.
It's yours.
And that's the thing. It's yours.
It's yours. It's yours.
And if he's incurring debt, it's also yours.
Well, that's the thing. And gosh, I just read a statistic. It's like 75% of women are unpleasantly surprised at what the finances are when either there's death or a divorce. 75% unpleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I don't doubt that. People who are like, he took out second and third mortgages on our home. I thought it was paid off. So
what healthy looks like, you have to ask and see what the reaction is, which we said at the very beginning of this podcast, really about anything when it comes to your needs. And what else do you want people to know about this book, Kate?
I want them to know, about the book itself. One of the things I talk about in the beginning of the book is I give women permission, right? I want women to know that it's okay to be asking these questions. It is okay to read this book. It may feel really subversive. It may feel, like you're doing something wrong. And, in many senses, you're kind of probably reading it behind your spouse's back. And, but if you're looking for answers, promise that by the end of this book, you will have all the tools that you need in order to make your decision. You don't have to make it immediately, because you still might not be ready to actually cross the line and actually make the decision and actually, have the talk. But when you're ready to, it's all there. It's all in there. How to have the talk, how to talk to your kids, all of it. So, yeah.
And I know on your website, I love, because it says, you just stated you may not want someone to see you reading this book, or even for it to show up on the credit card, and you offer different ways that they might go about getting the book. So go to kateanthony.com on her page about the book, and she gives you some great suggestions. It's obviously available on Amazon, the D Word, and it's available on my website as well. So JackieMillerCoaching.com, recommended reading. Your book is there. And you guys go and find it. It officially comes out December 26th, right?
That's correct. That is correct. So it's available for pre-order before that. Usually if you pre-order something, certainly on Amazon, it arrives the day that it'll arrive on pre-order day. So, happy Boxing Day.
Awesome. Hey, you could always be ordering it for a friend.
That's right. Or have it sent to your friend's house and go pick it up later.
Exactly. Well, I will let you go, because I'm about to piss our listeners off. It is about 80 degrees here in Southern California, Los Angeles area, right?
Is it? I haven't been outside today. Is that right?
It is. I went to run errands, and I was like, wow. I mean, it is definitely beach weather. So sorry, people in Minnesota.
Sorry, everybody. Yeah, sorry. Jackie and I are going outside.
We're going to the beach.
We're going to the beach.
Kate, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure. Always have great talks with you.
Thank you. And I'll see you at the beach.
All right. See you there.